evening, and welcome to The Real Joe Biden. I'm Boris Epstein, Strategic Advisor with Trump 2020. Joining me is Katrina Pearson, Senior Advisor with Trump 2020, and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from the 21st District of New York. Thank you so much. Well, before we go on, actually, I've been told very specifically that I've got to point at the marquee over there and tell everybody to text MAGA to 88022. Text MAGA to 88022. Well, that wraps it up. Joe Biden went pretty long. He got really angry there at the end. What did you make of the fourth night?
Well, I think that we are seeing 50 years of failed policies. We are really looking backwards to the failures of Obama's and Biden's term and Biden as vice president. We heard from the Clintons the day before. This is not the type of leadership we need. What we did not hear from Joe Biden was standing up for our law enforcement. We did not hear from Joe Biden how he's going to grow our economy. And we deserve those answers. That leadership we know comes from President Trump.
Did anything tonight add to the Democrats' potential votes in November, Katrina?
No, Boris. In fact, what I just saw was kind of scary.
At the end there, right?
At the end was kind of creepy for me. He got really angry and very scary when this was an opportunity for the Democrats to show their vision for the future, to show their love and passion for the country. And the only thing that they have expressed was their disdain for President Trump's personality. They negated every opportunity to provide a sensible policy because they don't have anything. To your point, Congresswoman, this was a very huge missed opportunity for the Democrats. I don't believe that they've added anything to their ticket. In fact, I think it drew away, because what this highlights tonight is President Trump's positive patriotism and what he's had from the very beginning.
So it's been 4 nights of this socialist snooze fest. Socialist snooze fest. It was terrible. The first night was boring. The second night was a bunch of losers like John Kerry. Last night was retreads like Hillary Clinton, as you mentioned, and Bill Clinton went on Tuesday. And tonight was supposed to be the big night, and they had Bobby Francis, Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, Mike Bloomberg, who's been literally a member of every party in America, and then they supposedly topped it off with Joe Biden. Is this the worst major party convention in our lifetimes?
Well, look at the viewership. It was in the toilet, frankly. There were not a lot of people tuning in across the country.
In the toilet.
And when we are looking at key swing states, or you look at my district, I know that there are not people who are tuning in because they want to see strong leadership. And I think what we've seen this week is a real contrast. President Trump has visited Pennsylvania, he's visited Wisconsin, he's visited Minnesota, and he's visited Arizona. He's out there hearing directly from the American people, outworking Joe Biden to earn their votes. President Trump put more mileage on the campaign trail this past week than Joe Biden has put in his entire campaign. So we are seeing a real contrast here, and we're going to see an even more contrast next week when we see President Trump's strong leadership and hear from the American people directly rather than the has-beens like the Clintons.
Katrina, Joe Biden decried racism, said that on his 100th year in politics, he's finally going to end racism in America, even though he's the one that talked about racial jungle, called African-American men predators in the last few months, said, "You ain't black if you don't vote for me," talked to a black reporter and referred to him as a junkie on cocaine, and then said, to top it all off, all black people are pretty much the same, right?
Right.
So is Joe Biden the right person to end racism in America?
Well, Joe Biden is definitely the person that started the institutional racism when we talk about all of the complaints that we're seeing today. Everything that's going on with George Floyd, the protesters, Black Lives Matter started under the Obama-Biden administration. Look, Joe Biden bragged about being the guy that authored the '94 crime bill, saying we're going to lock everyone up unless it's jaywalking, right? This is the guy that wrote the bill, that pushed for it. Bill Clinton signed it into law, and Kamala Harris pushed forward on it. So look, I think that this choice is going to be very clear in November. With minority voters, it is very clear. And I've seen people my age, whether they're in their 40s, even in their 30s, are all coming out saying we are not fooled by this message of Joe Biden, because they've heard exactly what you said just a couple of weeks ago. Joe Biden is still exuding racism out of his mouth.
And something that really jumped out to me tonight, he talked about anti-Semitic violence, claiming that there's anti-Semitism among Trump supporters, which is total nonsense. I'm proud to be Jewish, fully of Jewish heritage. The anti-Semitism I saw this week was from the DNC when they had the despicable Linda Sarsour on their programming under all of their branding. They had Linda Sarsour, who pals around with Louis Farrakhan, who's called My People termites, wants to exterminate us. So how dare Joe Biden be that hypocritical? I mean, does he not know what's going on, or does he just think that Americans are stupid?
They're hoping that Americans aren't tuning in to how far left Democrats are currently in this country and his supporters are. The fact that you have the reprehensible Linda Sarsour, the fact that you have people during the daytime programming saying they want to dismantle capitalism. And when it comes to combating anti-Semitism and standing up for the state of Israel, no president has done more than President Trump. I've been to Israel to hear directly about how grateful they are for President Trump's strong leadership, strengthening our alliance with Israel.
Katrina, you and I have been on the Trump campaign for a long time. We've been with President Trump for a long time, and it's been such an honor to work with you and, of course, for President Trump. Have you ever heard him say or do anything that even resembles the anti-Semitism we see from the left? He is the most supportive of the Jewish people of all Americans. Don't you agree?
I agree. Look, his daughter and son-in-law are Jewish.
And grandchildren.
So it would be pretty absurd for him to say anything negative, to do anything negative. So, look, we've been there a long time.
Right.
All they can do is hurl the insults, whether it's racism, sexism, misogynism. Every ism out there is what they're going to throw at our president. Since 2015, we've been dealing with this. But it's just not going to stick, because having a platform that's just vote for me because I'm not Trump, it's not a winning message for the American public. I was just in Minnesota. That state is on fire for President Trump. He is the law and order candidate. The crowds, and it was just me. And I just was blown away by the enthusiasm.
Big deal.
They cannot wait to get out there and vote for President Trump. They've made millions of phone calls. I was just excited being there.
Speaking of phone calls, don't ignore our marquee. Text MAGA to 88022. Something, Katrina, you just hit on is law and order. Congresswoman, you are a huge supporter of our men and women of law enforcement, of the police. Compare and contrast this convention, which is for chaos, for rioting, for letting America go down the toilet, as you mentioned earlier about their ratings, versus the policies of our President Donald Trump.
Well, silence is deafening. You have not heard a single speaker who participated in the Democrats' convention stand up for our law enforcement officers. President Trump has an incredibly strong record of always backing our police, always standing up for our law enforcement. That's why he's getting endorsed by law enforcement agencies across the country. That's why he has the support of the Border Patrol. I come from the state of New York. I represent upstate New York. We are seeing the rioting and the looting in downstate, in New York City, in cities that are led by Democrats, where they have not shown support and leadership for law enforcement, men and women who are making sure we have safe and secure communities. And as I talk to voters in my district, the suburbs, mom, working women, they are very concerned about what they're seeing on their television screens. And they know that they're not going to get the support they need and the policies they need for safe communities from Joe Biden, but they will get it with President Trump.
I mean, Katrina, during this convention, the Socialist Snooze Fest, they lifted up Seattle and Portland, the rioting. Oh, it's peaceful, it's kumbaya, we're hugging and loving each other. I mean, again, do they think Americans are not paying attention? Do they think Americans are dumb, or just are Democrats trying to fool the American people?
Well, they hope Americans aren't paying attention, and that's why you see such a controlled attempt to put out information to the public and to block the president's message. So I think that's been quite obvious. But what they still haven't picked up on, the mainstream media, is that there's so many other forms of media out there. And that's why you see the big tech companies cracking down on the information that's being disseminated out into the public. But to the Congresswoman's point, moms, women, this is a voting bloc that they are banking on turning out for the Democrat Party. And, I mean, I've heard it firsthand in these swing states. These moms want to make sure that their kids can go outside without being attacked by a violent mob.
And that is the key of every American, right? It's safety and security. Physical safety and security, economic safety and security. I mean, Joe Biden sort of dribbled on about the economy and jobs lost. Well, the last 3 months have been the best job-gaining months in the history of this country. The S&P 500 has hit records. This president built the greatest economy in the history of the country, and he's doing it again. And Joe Biden presided over the worst recovery in history. Can Joe Biden offer anything, Congresswoman, to the American people that is better than President Trump?
Well, what he's offering is $4 trillion in new taxes. So for all of the Americans viewing this, for all of the small businesses across this country, those taxes are going to be devastating. It is going to cause job losses, and it is going to slow our economic recovery. Look, I've worked with President Trump while serving in Congress. He has delivered the largest economic rescue package in our nation's history over the course of the COVID crisis. And I know, as I visited small businesses in my district and talked to small businesses across the country, were it not for his strong leadership, they'd be in very, very challenging circumstances. But they know Joe Biden is not the answer, because it means more regulations, higher taxes, crushing our small businesses.
And it means open borders.
Right.
I mean, think about that for a second when it comes to China and the virus. Imagine if we'd had open borders like Hillary Clinton wanted. Imagine if we had, raising taxes like Hillary Clinton wanted. If President Trump were not president, we'd be in far worse shape today. And it was because of President Trump and his policies that he was able to build this massive, robust economy that withstood the pandemic. And a lot of Americans recognize that.
As we wrap up this first segment of The Real Joe Biden, let's talk about the speech a little more. Katrina, he went on for a long time. Uncle Joe, I think he was trying to prove he has stamina. We know he has none. President Trump has all the stamina you need to be president. Biden's got none. And then he got so angry at the end. Plus, the lack of haircut was kind of distracting a little bit. I mean, what happened there with Joe Biden's speech? Was it what you expected? Was it worse? Or did he actually do a better job?
Well, I think he completed sentences, so to me, I think that was a positive for him. But I will say that it was extremely disappointing because, again, I felt like this was going to be an opportunity for him to change the trajectory of the messaging coming out of the party, the doom, the gloom, the apocalyptic message, and he didn't. In fact, he dug his heels in on the negativity and the tone. And Americans don't like that. They want a leader that sees the bright future and wants to work towards that. And he provided zero vision, so I think it was an epic fail.
Congresswoman, what do you think?
I think Joe Biden is running from his record. He ran for president 33 years ago for the first time. This is someone who has overseen 50 years of failed policies, half a century. I'm only 36 years old, Boris, so he basically, for the course of my entire life, we can blame him for our bad trade deals. We can blame him for a government that's not working. He is part of the swamp that President Trump is trying to defeat. And the American people don't want the politics of the past. They want strong leadership of the future. And I was particularly struck when Joe Biden brought up being tough on China. Every American knows that President Trump has been the toughest when it comes to countering China. And part of the reason why we have to have that strong leadership from President Trump is because of the failed record of Joe Biden and the bad trade deals, losing our manufacturing jobs to China. So the choice is clear. I'm really excited about next week to see the strong leadership and the voices of everyday Americans.
I couldn't agree more. Joe Biden sold our country down the river to China once. We cannot allow him to do so again. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be right back on The Real Joe Biden. But before we go anywhere, Gary Colby's around here. So just for him, again, look at the marquee. Text MAGA to 88022. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with The Real Joe Biden.